Okay, I'd like to call the Human Resources Committee agenda to order and ask anybody to declare pecuniary interest either now if it arises down the agenda. Action items. A. Gallagher McDowell Associates Non-Union Job Evaluation Market Review Overview Presentation. Larry Moat, Managing Director, is here to introduce a consultant, I think. So the podium is yours, Larry, and I will leave that with you.
I think I've mastered the technology, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your introduction. So, as indicated, we are two associates from Gallagher McDowell Associates. I'm here with Jane Mizanski, who is one of my colleagues who'll be working on the project. And what I wanted to do was to introduce you to Gallagher McDowell Associates. We're going to meet a couple times during the course of the project because we feel it's important for you as a committee to understand what we're doing, what progress we're making. I think we're going to have at least two other meetings as well, one in the middle, one in the end. So this is an introductory meeting for you to get to know us and to ask questions about the project. But what we're going to be doing is introducing ourselves. We'll explain the project, the process, and the timelines involved, and feel free to ask questions about the presentation as we're going through and afterwards as well. So about Gallagher McDowell Associates, the lead consultants are senior consultants, Marianne Love, who unfortunately had a conflict and couldn't be here today, but she's got, gosh, I know, maybe 30 years of experience in consulting, specializing in the municipal sector. Don't hold it against her, she is a lawyer. Jane Mizanski, again, oodles of experience in the municipal sector. She used to work with MPAC before she joined us. And Larry Moat, that's me, and I'm the Managing Director of Gallagher McDowell Associates. I've got about 30 years of consulting experience. When you add all the years, it's rather embarrassing. It makes me feel rather old. But I think we probably have close to 80 or 90 years of experience there. Gallagher McDowell Associates is a compensation shop. That is what we do. We're compensation specialists, and we have expertise with both union and non-union compensation programs, and we do specialize to a large degree in the municipal sector as well, so we've got a good footprint there. In terms of shameless advertising, at the bottom we've got some of our services. The most relevant ones to this project are job evaluation, leveling jobs in an organization, pay equity services, audits and conducting reviews, conducting custom surveys of the market, and calibrating salary structures based on internal equity and market as well. So we'll talk about those activities in the presentation. Just to give a high-level review of what we're going to be doing and the needs that we'll be responding to, we're going to be looking at external competitiveness. And the reason for doing that is so that you can make sure that you can attract and retain the talent you need to fulfill your mission, to service the constituents in the county. We'll be looking at a risk management issue or compliance issue of pay equity. And we'll be talking a little bit about what pay equity means, some of the risks involved, and how it can be approached. Internal equity and wage compression issues. Once we've looked at an internal hierarchy of jobs, looked at the market, we'll be able to basically assist you with making sure that the wage structure that ultimately is adopted actually works, that it will reflect the needs of the organization both now and moving forward. And we also have some methods and processes which we'll talk about that will leverage technology to hopefully make the participants involved enjoy it, or at least it'll be less painful. Okay, so some of those tools and systems, in terms of of a foundation for the project, we'll be providing a gender-neutral job evaluation system. And that is just a tool that enables you to compare jobs to each other. We'll talk about what that will look like, what is involved and how it is applied. We're also going to be applying some online tools to the project that not only are green and paperless, but make the process go much more smoother because there's less paper involved. It's easier to share information and easier for employees, as we'll see, to contribute to the process. We'll talk about those tools as well. In terms of updating your current compensation plan, there are a couple of key project components on this slide and the next. They basically say the same thing in different ways, but the project components are collecting information about your jobs, and you've got 120 jobs in your organization. Information on those jobs, what the jobs do, the responsibilities, the qualifications required have to be captured, and then that becomes the foundation for job evaluation. Job evaluation then becomes the foundation for a pay equity review, and then when we put market information together with the evaluation results, we can give you an updated salary structure. Again, looking at the same process from sort of a different perspective, just some fancy pictures there, but it all starts with the foundations of collecting accurate job information so that evaluators can evaluate jobs and make comparisons of jobs correctly, and then it flows through to the other steps in the process. In terms of timing, we'll talk a little bit more about the timing, but steps 2 and 3 can really be done concurrently, largely. Doing the evaluation process to identify internal equity and the external review of market, that can be done largely concurrently. And right now we are in the project orientation phase, obviously. Some key concepts in the project. One is internal equity, and that is looking at the value of jobs determined through a job evaluation perspective. And the point is that job evaluation will assign a point score to all the jobs, 120 jobs, and then that point score will enable you to say, well, what level does the job fall in the organization? What are jobs that are like that in the organization? So that's why it underpins the whole project. Pay equity is looking at the pay of female jobs and comparing them to the pay of male jobs that are similarly valued, and similarly valued using that evaluation methodology that would produce the point scores. That enables you to compare jobs that are completely different and say that they are similar, and then do your pay equity test. Market competitiveness, we'll be looking at that. We'll talk about how we're going to look at the market, but in terms of how that is applied, what we would do is identify salary grades, anchor those grades to the market, and then those grades, salary grades, would determine whether a position is being paid according to market or not, based on the salary grade. And it's all driven by the last point, the County of Bruce compensation philosophy, where we would, you don't want necessarily to be at the high end of the market, you don't want to be the low end of the market, you want to be like Goldilocks, you want to be just right. You want to be at the middle of the market so that you can be sure that you're not overpaying talent and that you're not underpaying talent as well. Because if you underpay, you're at the risk of potentially losing talent and becoming a training ground for other organizations. Okay. In terms of success requirements and how we'll be approaching the project, we will provide you with the expertise and objectivity in the evaluation process. We're one of looking at me, I'm one of these odd people who actually likes job evaluation. We're experts at it. It's one of the core competencies at McDowell Associates. And we, based on our experience with evaluating jobs in the municipal sector, we've got a frame of reference that we can bring to this project. Employee communication is going to be key to the project as well. And we've got some employee communication orientation dates scheduled later in October where we'll talk about why we're doing it, how we're going to do it, and really get employee participation in the process. We want employees to participate by describing their jobs to us, by answering a questionnaire so that we can accurately evaluate the jobs. We also want to impart knowledge to the county staff. So how you can maintain your evaluation systems and pay equity programs and salary administration programs moving forward. And lastly, the evaluation plan that we are going to be applying has to be able to evaluate all the jobs in the organization. So it has to be flexible enough to evaluate senior jobs, less senior jobs, all types of work that are done in the organization. So internal equity is all about comparing apples to oranges. We're looking at comparing different jobs to different jobs. And the only way that you can really do that is by having a common denominator to enable you to make those assessments. That's what job evaluation is all about. And as evaluators, what we would do is we would look at the job descriptions, the job information questionnaires that employees would complete, and we would say, well, okay, based on that information, this factor level for complexity or this factor level for experience or education is most appropriate. You don't necessarily have a perfect fit, but you pick the factor level as an evaluator which is most appropriate, and then we would document the evaluation rating that we'd applied so that down the road it could be maintained or defended if necessary. Essentially, that is the process that an evaluator would do. You go through each job factor by factor and rate it based on the material that employees provide, the job descriptions, and the input of managers. And you'd end up with a total point score that you would then use to compare jobs to each other. Now, some of the benefits of using the McDowell system. It's been used widely in the marketplace, extensively in the municipal sector, but it's been used in other industry sectors as well, manufacturing, financial services, insurance. It's been used all over, and it's flexible enough to address the different types of work that most organizations do. It meets the requirements of the Pay Equity Act in terms of being gender neutral and having the required factors of skill, effort, responsibility, and working conditions. Bit of a caveat there, the Pay Equity Commission actually doesn't give a stamp of approval for any job evaluation plan. It's not like the McDowell plan has received a gold star. But having said that, we do know that review officers have looked at our plan many, many times and have consistently indicated that it is gender neutral. In fact, they've always indicated it's gender neutral. Okay, so quickly just showing you the components of the evaluation plan. There are 12 factors covering off skill, effort, responsibility, and working conditions. And as I mentioned, those are required by legislation. It's amazing how often you encounter some plans that are missing some of those required factors. but those are the required factors, and would be using each one of those to determine that rating and ranking of your positions. In terms of employee communication and participation, as I mentioned, employees are going to be introduced to the compensation project, and they'll be asked to complete a questionnaire. So they'll be prompted and given some training on how to go about completing that questionnaire. And as I mentioned, that is going to be the foundation on which the project is based. So it's important that employees understand why they're doing it and how they're going to do it, because that's going to be critical to the success of the project. The consultant, us, would then evaluate the jobs, and there'd be back and forth in the evaluation process. It's not just we've evaluated the jobs, we're done. There's what we call validation or sore thumbing at various stages. And the purpose of that is to make sure that when we look at the descriptions, when we look at the questionnaires, that we interpret the language correctly, and that the ultimate hierarchy of jobs should be a surprise to no one. Lastly, once the process is completed, employees would have a chance to review the pay equity plan and request a reconsideration of where they fall in the hierarchy if they are so inclined. Okay, some operating concepts. The job value, as I mentioned, is subject to validation. Once the point scores have been determined, we build into the process validation steps to make sure that managers feel that the jobs in their department are in the right internal hierarchy order, and then across function as well. We talk with senior managers and the CAO to make sure that the jobs are in fact presenting correctly in the hierarchy that's appropriate for the organization. When we're communicating about the hierarchy of jobs to employees, it's important that we not focus on the point scores themselves. I mean, I've mentioned several times that those are going to be the factors that drive the project and determine where jobs would fall in an internal hierarchy. But when communicating to employees, you don't necessarily want to focus on point scores, because then people can get into the mindset, we call it point building, that you say, well, I want to get 5 more points. How do I get that? Really what you want to do is make sure that the similar value groups, the jobs that we're grouping together, make sense and are believable and are consistent. Here is a sample ladder chart that presents a hierarchy for 13 jobs in a sample organization. And you can see what we've done here. We've got the point scores, so we've evaluated all the jobs, and the point scores range from 455 to 630 points. What we've done next is we've said, okay, let's see what jobs should be grouped together because they are similarly valued. And mathematically, we said, well, let's look at 50-point widths for each similar value group or band. There's nothing magical about 50 points. There is some flexibility in how the banding is approached, but the important thing is that you group jobs that are similar and that are intuitively so, and that there be some mathematical basis for doing so. That's what a ladder chart would do, and that's how similar value groups would be identified and defined. Pay equity. Pay equity is the law of the land. It applies to any employer in Ontario who has more than 10 employees, and it's amazing how many organizations that we encounter who don't keep an eye on pay equity. So it's important that we look at it now, and it's a credit to the organization that you are looking at it as well. And the purpose of pay equity is to ensure that there is no discrimination in pay between male and female jobs. Male and female jobs that are of similar value. And the only way you can identify jobs that are of similar value is by going through this evaluation process. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing that. Male and female job classes are defined in the legislation a couple of different ways, but one of the ways is just by looking at the incumbency. So if 60% or more of the incumbents in a job class are female, that would make it a female-dominated job class. If 70% or more are male, that would make it a male-dominated job class. And there are some other tests as well for historical tendencies or stereotypical incumbency, but those are the starting points for determining whether a job class is male or female. And once you've done that, then you look for male comparators and do an analysis. We'll, on the next slide, we have an example of what that analysis looks like. But the end of the process is preparing a pay equity plan and then posting it in the organization so that employees know where they would fall in the hierarchy, who their comparators would be, and then they would have the opportunity to ask for reconsideration of where they fall in that comparator group. So here is a sample pay equity impact chart looking at the same grouping of jobs that we were looking at before in this mythical organization. What we've done is we've taken the hierarchy of jobs that we were looking at before, the same banding we were looking at before, similar value groups, and now we've added gender and we've added pay, job rate to the equation. And remember, pay equity is all about comparing the pay of female-dominated and male-dominated jobs and making sure that there's no discrimination. And in the first band, jobs A, B, and C, we've got 2 female jobs and 1 male job. So job B is your male comparator by definition, because it's the only male job there. And you compare job B and C, and there is a difference. There is a gap of $2,000, and that represents a pay equity adjustment in time. Looking at the next group of jobs, jobs D, E, F, and G, there are 2 male comparators there. There's job D and job F. When you're looking at jobs on a job-to-job basis, you're allowed in the legislation to pick the lowest paid male job class as your comparator. So job F would be the lowest paid male comparator in that grouping of 4 jobs. Again, you do your tests, you make your comparisons, and you find that job G has a pay equity adjustment. Moving down to the next level, you've got 2 jobs, 1 female, 1 male. The female job is paid more than the male job, and that's just the way it is. Pay equity adjustments only go one way. They would only be applied to a female position that is paid lower to a male job class. In the last band, there are no male comparators. So what we would do in that case is what's called a proportional value test, which is just a big fancy phrase for saying that we'd use regression analysis, simple regression, to predict what the pay would be for a male job in that band. So that's what is being presented under the column PV rate, and you do your comparison again and identify any female positions that would fall below that threshold for a male comparator. So pay equity is fun. Okay, market competitiveness. As part of the process of determining your market competitiveness, we are going to be conducting a custom survey. And we'll be focusing on counties, upper tier municipalities, and looking at it's a bit of an art form when you're developing a comparator group, but we want to look at municipalities of comparable size in terms of population, and also in terms of the scope of services and the types of jobs that we find there. We would actually would want to look at municipalities that wouldn't necessarily have a seasonal influx, so that that can distort the services and the market information. But that would be the kind of the parameters that we'd look at when we're determining a comparator group. And here is a preliminary, and I emphasize the word preliminary, list of comparators. What we would like to do is present this and for your consideration now, but as we go out into the marketplace and contact these organizations, look at their data, we might well find that we need to perhaps revisit the comparator list and add different comparators or whatever to the mix. So at a later meeting, we'll talk about this again, but we wanted to present a preliminary comparator list now. There are 10 organizations there. Unfortunately, they're not sorted by population. They were sorted by something else, and I neglected to resort them. But 10 organizations, and there's no magic number to the number 10. It's just in our experience, that provides a reasonably sized comparator group so that you can have statistical reliability in the results. We would require at least 4 comparators matching to a job in order to produce results. So you want to make sure that you've got a large enough sample to enable you to cover off market information for as many jobs as possible. In terms of identifying these jobs, we've looked at jobs at counties rather that are geographically nearby, and we've also looked at jobs, counties rather, that are similar when you look at the overall statistics to County Bruce in terms of population. And to do that, we had to look at some counties that are larger in terms of population, some counties that are smaller, so that when we look at the 50th percentile, which is the middle of the sample, they are close to Walkerton. So you can see in terms of population, looking at the 2011 census, that the 50th percentile, the middle of that sample of 10 organizations, is about 76,000, and Walkerton is a little bit smaller at 64,000, 65,000. And one thing to point out about market is when we do the market review, we go to these organizations and we would request their job descriptions. We'd request their organization charts so that we would then compare them to your materials and do a match that way. It's not really a good practice to match entirely on job title. It's always good practice to make sure that you are comparing jobs to other jobs in the market based on their content and responsibilities. Okay, in terms of timelines, even though the weather is so nice outside, it is October, and we are at the start of this project. We are in the orientation phase and data collection phase. As I mentioned, later in October, we are going to be having meetings with staff and managers just to let them know what the project is about and how they'll be asked to contribute. So that's the first phase in the project. The next phase would be getting into the actual evaluation phase. Once we get the information from employees about their jobs, once they start completing those questionnaires, we can start evaluating those positions. And as I said, there are 120 jobs or so that we will be evaluating. As part of that process, employees will be able to have appeals or reconsiderations as to where their jobs fall in the hierarchy and how they would impact the pay equity analysis as well. Concurrent with that, in November and December, we'll be conducting a market review. So looking at those jobs from those 10 comparators or perhaps other comparators, and gathering information, conducting statistics, and doing analysis that way so that we can develop a salary structure based on your internal hierarchy of jobs from your evaluation process and based on the market so that you'd be competitive. And in terms of final stages, what we would do is review and finalize the project and our report, reviewing with senior managers, reviewing with the CEO just to make sure that the hierarchy again is correct, that the pay equity, that the salary structure as defined is appropriate to the organization and affordable, and that any pay equity issues are understood and addressed, and there'd be reports to council as well as a final report to document the process. So that, in a nutshell, is what we'll be doing, what we'll be bringing to the table, and how we'll be doing it. Any questions for me to bring comfort?
Questions from committee? Paul?
Through this process, when you see that some positions are overpaid, I'm sure you'll just red circle the female positions and dock the males, or how you handle that?
Well, hopefully not, but you're right. I mean, there might well be some jobs that would be a red circle. Typically not that many, but it's a possibility.
Other questions, comments? Anything to add, Marianne?
No, thank you very much for your presentation today, Larry.
Okay.
Very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your
And
time.
looking forward to getting this project off the ground and running.
Well, thank you for your time, and it's a beautiful day to be up in Walkerton.
Thank you very much. Okay, next item is 2017 budget assumptions.
And those were distributed last meeting.
Last meeting, okay. Closed session. So I need a mover and seconder to go into closed. Mike and David, that the committee move into a closed meeting to discuss personnel matters pursuant to Section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, relating to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. All those in favor?